to get something to eat? I know we rushed you a little bit there.
Oh, man, I came late. Yes, I did, thank you.
You could bring it in here if you want. Just don't tell anybody I said it was okay.
You're just making up for that wine you spilled.
What's that? What'd you say?
You're just making up for the wine you spilled.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, the Medicars have a special rules for the Medicars because they cleaned up the wine that I spilled.
Right.
Oh, it's funny. Okay.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thanks.
Maybe Zach needs one. Do you need one, Zachary, to follow? Which book do you have? You've got that. Zachary could use one.
Yeah.
This is for the reading that we'll do we're gonna read out of the book of Ruth at the time that the Torah portion's gonna be. We're gonna be reading the book of Ruth.
Great.
So Rabbi will give you the page number when it's time.
Are you all set on up? Okay, we'll get started. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're going to commence our service with the singing of Matovu on page 290.
Please join with me once you find the page. Matovu alecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Matovu alecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Vani birov hastecha avotitecha eshtachalecha choshecha ve'yiratecha. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Adonai hafti me'on betecha Ulechom mishkan kivodecha v'yishtachave v'yikra Iftecha lifnei Adonai osni. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov hastecha Aneni b'nei ishecha Aneni b'nei ishecha. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenatecha Yisrael. And let us read responsively, beginning on page 294. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who stretches the earth over the waters. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who strengthens our steps. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who clothes the naked.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who gives strength to the weary.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who made me in the image of God.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who girds Israel with strength.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who crowns Israel with splendor.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. And our service continues now with the Chatzi Kaddish, page 312, followed by the Baruch Hu on page 313. Please rise for the Baruch Hu, page 313. And you may be seated. Let us join in prayer. On page 317, we read responsively. Our God, inspiration and guide for all, you have spoken in 1,000 tongues for us to hear. In every land and every age, your children have heard you and imagined you in separate ways, and yet, O God, you are one unifier of humanity.
We give thanks for the sages
And teachers who bring us understanding of your will. Gratefully we recall the lawgivers and prophets, the psalmists and sages of Israel, and joyfully we remember that from the dawn of Israel's life we would turn to you and find purpose.
May the teachings of our ancestors live on in our minds, and their passion for righteousness stir our hearts. Help us to live so that our daily conduct reveals the beauty and wisdom of your truth. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher bi'amo Yisrael bi'ahava. Blessed are you, Adonai, the one who has chosen the children of Israel with love, to acknowledge the oneness and uniqueness of God. Page 318, our prayer of affirmation, the Shema. Please rise. Be seated. We continue with the V'ahavta, page 319. V'ten kedoshim Elohechem. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles and earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace, the Michamocha, page 322.
I know it's not quite Shavuot yet, but I would like to do the Michamocha Shavuot Nusach for this one. So I'll do it for the first verse, and we can read the second and third verse together.
Sure.
Michamocha Bailim Adonai Michamocha Nidach HaKodesh Nora Tehilot Osef Elei Shirah Hashdesha
Hu Kiolim Lishimcha Al Sfat Hayam Yachad Kulam Hodu Vihimlichu V'amru Adonai Yimloch Leolam Va'ed
Sur Yisrael Kuma Be'ezrat
Yisrael Ufdei Chenumecha Yehuda V'Yisrael Goalenu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael Baruch Ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Please rise for the Tefillah. Adonai Sefatai Tiftach, page 323.
Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Agita Hilotecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagdol Hagibor v'Nahorah Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Hasdei Avot V'Imahot ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ויצרת שרה.
Page 325.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מקראי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. צונף נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מרמוך בגרורות ומדום אלך מלך ממית ומחיי לחיות החול ברוך אתה אדוני מקיים הכל.
And we continue page 326 with the Kedusha in the middle of the page.
נקדש את שמך בעולם כי שם דיבתשים אותו משמי מרום ככתוב היה נביאך וחרז זמר
continue silently on page 329 through the conclusion of the Amidah, which is on page 337. Let us join in prayer, page 333, top of the page, and together. For all these things we give thanks. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach, together. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hotov shimcha ulachana el lechodot. We continue now with the conclusion of the tefillah of the Amidah.
Please join with me once.
And we conclude the Amidah with the singing of Oseh Shalom, page 337.
Oseh Shalom.
Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom
Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru.
Amen. And close our books for our Torah service. We're going to do something a little bit different. Normally, we would take the Torah out and we would read from it and so forth. But since this is Erev Shavuot, right before the festival, it's customary on Shavuot to read the book of Ruth. In part because it takes place during the harvest season, the first harvest, and also Ruth is the prototype for Jewish conversion. The idea being that anyone can receive the Torah, that the Torah is open to all, and she is the person who decides to leave her homeland, much like Abraham did upon the word of God, but she decides to leave, of course, for other reasons as well. So we're going to read the book of Ruth. There's only 4 chapters. It's not very long, and I'm hopeful that we'll have some time to actually discuss it, that you may have some questions or insights into the text. And so we'll combine both a kind of reading of our sacred text along with a discussion. So in these books, which I asked people to get, the blue book here, if you don't have it, there's plenty of copies in the library, I believe. Or if you want to just sit and listen, then you're more than welcome to do that, whatever you're most comfortable with. I think there's some right outside, right? I think there's.
I think they're over here. I need to grab some.
Oh, thank you, Molly. You didn't have to. Those who don't have a copy of the book. Sure. Oh, Molly, thank you. Let's do that. Goodness. Those of you that have the books right now, it's on page 1419. So I need 4 volunteers because there's 4 chapters. None of them are terribly long. It's only 5 pages all. I think 6 pages altogether. Do you have any volunteers, Dave? David, good, thank you. So why don't you'll do chapter 1. Who would like to read chapter 2? Don't all jump up at once.
I'll read one of the chapters.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So why don't you take chapter 2, Maggie? What about chapter 3?
Would you like to read the chapter?
Okay, good. So you read chapter 3. And who would like to read chapter 4? Priscilla, since you volunteered Zachary, why don't you take chapter 4? No good deed goes unpunished. 1419. Yeah, in fact, if you'd like, rather than sit back there, when you, if you're comfortable, we'd like people to come up here, because that way everybody can hear,
Yeah,
particularly
for the
people.
benefit of our friends on Zoom, right?
Right, we have friends. How many people we have on Zoom today? 4, 2. We have, is it Howard and Patricia and Nate and Iris? Okay, welcome.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
In the days when the chieftains ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah, with his wife and 2 sons, went to reside in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. Help me out if I need it. His wife's name was Naomi, and his 2 sons were named Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem and Judah. They came to the country of Moab and remained there. Elimelech Naomi's husband died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. Then those 2, Mahlon and Chilion, also died. So the woman was left without her 2 sons and without her husband. She started out with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab. For in the country of Moab, she had heard that the Lord had taken note of his people and given them food. Accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living, and they set out on the road back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Turn back, each of you, to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that each of you find security in the house of a husband." And she kissed them farewell. They broke into weeping and said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi replied, "Turn back, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I any more sons in my body who might be husbands for you? Turn back, my daughters, for I am too old and to be married. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I were married tonight and I also bore sons, should you wait for them to grow up? Should you on their account debar yourselves from marriage? Oh no, my daughters, my lot is far more bitter than yours, for the hand of the Lord has struck out against me." They broke into weeping again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law farewell. But Ruth clung to her. So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has returned to her people and her gods. Go follow your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me, if anything but death parts me from you." When Naomi saw how determined she was to go with her, she ceased to argue with her, and the 2 went on until they reached Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole city buzzed with excitement over them. The women said, "Can this be Naomi?" "Do not call me Naomi," she replied. "Call me Mara, for Shaddai has made my lot very bitter. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. How can you call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me, when Shaddai has brought misfortune upon me?" Thus Naomi returned from the country of Moab. She returned with her daughter-in-law Ruth the Moabite, and they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest.
Thank you, David. Beautiful reading. Thank you.
My version's a little different, is that okay?
That's fine, sure.
Is that all right?
I'm sure they'll be.
Okay, so chapter 2. And Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a man of wealth of the family of Amimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth and the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me now go to the field and glean ears of grain after him, in whose sight I might find favor." And she said to him, "Go, my daughter." And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was a relative of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered him, "The Lord bless you." Then said Boaz to his servant, who was set over the reapers, "Whose maiden is this?" And the servant who was set over the reapers answered and said, "It is a Moabite maiden who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." And she said, "I beg you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves." So she came, and she had continued from morning until now, scarcely spending any time in the hut. Then said Boaz to Ruth, "Do you not hear, my daughter? Do not go to glean in another field, nor go away from here, but stay here close to my maidens. Let your eyes be on the field that they reap, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said to him, May I have found favor in your eyes, that you shall have taken notice of me, seeing that I am a stranger. And Boaz answered and said to her, it has been fully told to me, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people which you did not know before. The Lord will recompense your work, and a full reward shall be given to you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, Let me find favor in your sight, my lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not one of your maidservants. And at the mealtime, Boaz said to her, Come here and eat of the bread, dip your morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he passed her parched grain, and she ate and was satisfied and left. And when she rose to glean, Boaz commanded his young man, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls on purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. So she gleaned in the field until the evening, and she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought out and gave to her what she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, What have you gleaned today? And what have you worked? Blessed is he who took notice of you. And she took her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, The man's name with whom I worked today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he by the Lord, who has not abandoned his loving kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said to her, The man is a relative of ours, one of our closest relatives. And Ruth the Moabite said, He also said to me, You shall keep close to my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, It is good, my daughter, that you may go out with his maidens, that you should not be molested in any other field. So she kept close to the maidens of Boaz to glean to the end of the barley harvest and of all the wheat harvest, and lived with her mother-in-law.
Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, Daughter, I must seek a home for you where you may be happy. Now there is our kinsman Boaz, whose girls you were close to. He will be winnowing barley onto the threshing floor tonight. So bathe, anoint yourself, dress up, and go to the threshing floor. But do not disclose yourself to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he lies down, and go over and then cover his feet and lie down. He will tell you, What are you to do? She replied, I will do everything you tell me. She went down to the threshing floor and did everything as her mother-in-law had instructed her. Boaz ate and drank and was in a cheerful mood, and went to lie down beside the grain pile. Then she went over stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. In the middle of the night, the man gave a start and pulled back, and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked, and she replied, I am your handmaiden Ruth. Spread your robe over you. Spread your robe over your handmaiden, for you are a redeeming kinsman. He exclaimed, Blessed be the Lord, daughter. Your latest deed of loyalty, which is greater than the first, in that you have not turned to your to younger men, whether poor or rich. And now, daughter, have no fear. I will do in your behalf whatever you ask, for all the elders of my town know what a fine woman you are. But while it is true I'm a redeeming kinsman, there is never a redeemer closer than I am. Stay for the night, then in the morning see if he will act as a redeemer. Good. Let him redeem, but if he does not want to act as redeemer for you, I will do so myself. As the Lord lives, lie down until the morning. So she lay at his feet until dawn. She rose before one person that could distinguish another, for he thought, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, hold out the shawl you are wearing. And she held it while he measured out 6 measures of barley, and he put it on her back. When she got back to the town, she came to her mother-in-law, who asked, how is it with you, daughter? She told her all that the man had done for her, and she added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying to me, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Naomi said, stay here, daughter, till you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but you will settle in the matter today.
That was great. Meanwhile, Boaz had gone to the gate and sat down there. And now the Redeemer, who Boaz had mentioned, passed by. He called, come over and sit down here, so-and-so. And he came over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 elders of the town and said, be seated here. And they sat down. He said to the Redeemer, Naomi, now returned from the country of Moab, must sell the piece of land which belonged to our kinsman, Elimelech. I thought I should disclose that matter to you and say, acquire it in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you are willing to redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not redeem, tell me that I may know, for there is no one to redeem but you, and I will come with after you. I am willing to redeem it, he replied. Boaz continued, when you acquire the property from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabite, you must also acquire the wife of the deceased, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon the estate. The Redeemer replied, then I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own estate. You take over my right of redemption, for I am unable to exercise it. Now, this was formerly done in Israel in cases of redemption or exchange. To validate any transaction, one man would take off his sandal and hand it to the other. Such was the practice in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, acquire for yourself, he drew off his sandal, and Boaz said to the elders and to the rest of the people, you are witnesses today that I am acquiring from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. I am also acquiring Ruth, the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, as my wife, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate, that the name of the deceased may not disappear from among his kinsmen and from the gate of his hometown. You are witnesses today. All the people at the gate and the elders answered, we are. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built up the house of Israel. Prosper in Ephrathai, and perpetuate your name in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the offspring which is the Lord will give you by this young woman. So Boaz married Ruth. She became his wife, and he cohabitated with her. The Lord shall let her conceive, and she bore a son. And the woman said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has not withheld a redeemer from you today. May his name be perpetuated in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain your old age, for he is born of your daughter-in-law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons. Naomi took the child and held it to her bosom. She became its foster mother, and the women neighbors gave him a name, saying, A son is born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, father of David. This is the line of Perez. Perez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Aminadab. Aminadab begot Nahshon. Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz. Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse, or Jess, and Jess begot David.
What's the grape juice? Okay, sure.
He knows how to
Sure. So normally after the reading of this kind, we have a discussion or questions that you might have for the group as a whole. We can have the people online also join. Yes, David, you have a question, please, or a comment. It shouldn't just be a question. Any insights that you have into the text, please, David.
Will you comment on the use of the word redeemer?
Sure. There was called a right of redemption, or a duty to redeem. In other words, as you could see sort of in the text, that when a male passed away, okay, there was concern that his name would not be perpetuated.
So like preserving a family line.
Exactly. Also, there were problems with inheritance. If you go back to the 5 books of Moses, there's the story of Zelophehad daughters. He had daughters, and the land was going to be apportioned to the various families, including Zelophehad. When they entered the land of Israel, the land was going to be divided up, and every family would have its own land, and every tribe would have its own land. So say you were the tribe of say Judah, for example. So your family would get a portion of the land that was assigned to Judah, okay? And the right of inheritance of the land in those days, or at least according to biblical text, was done according to the males. Women did not have a right of inheritance.
No,
Let me finish. Hold on.
Okay.
No, let me finish. Well, they didn't. They didn't. However, in the story in the Bible, Zelophehad's daughters appealed to Moses, right? Okay, and Moses was troubled because he didn't know what to do, because the law that had been given at that time didn't allow for the possibility of what would happen if there were no sons to inherit the family's estate. So they appealed to Moses, and Moses appealed to God. And we have, interestingly enough, the principle of equity. That is, not every case that's in the Torah is covered. There's changes. Change takes place even during the time of the giving of the Torah. The Torah is not complete, even though it's eternal in theory. I'm just talking about rabbinic theory, or traditional theory is that God gave the Torah, and then that's divine law. But that divine law had gaps, just like in common law. And to fill those gaps, they had equity. In other words, if a justice wouldn't be done by applying the law, they would create equity to make sure that justice was done. So this is really the first case of equity. And God says that the daughters of Tzlafchad have spoken well. Therefore, as long as they do not marry, they will have the right of inheritance. In other words, they will get the land of their fathers, and they were right. Okay, so far so good, right? I'm sorry, wait, the part about getting married, that wasn't in Moses' original thing. So the tribes people got very upset. Why did they get upset? You can see, because if they marry, the concern was the right of inheritance would go to the husband and not to them. They would lose their, right. And so say, for example, he fell in love with someone from the tribe of Shimon. So now the person from Shimon would have not only the land that was assigned to him, but would also inherit the land that belonged to the tribe of Judah, and the tribe of Judah would be depleted, much like we have in the, what's it called, gerrymandering. It's kind of like gerrymandering, only in the Bible. I'm making a little bit of a joke, but that's the idea. In other words, one tribe could become more powerful. So they were limited, that if they married outside the tribe, they would lose their inheritance, or the one marrying in would lose, and that was the concern here. That's why he didn't redeem, because he would lose his own inheritance, and he was married as well, and that could be a problem if he was going to inherit or going to get Ruth, and say he was married. That could also pose some problems. So that's my understanding. Larry, is that your understanding of the text, or is it a little different?
If Moses had a bus and he put all those women that he gave equal rights to on the bus, we wouldn't have had the problem we had in Selma 3,000 years later.
That's right.
Well said.
Well said. Absolutely.
The problem is he didn't put everybody on the bus, but women's rights were established.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly that's the main point of the daughters of Tzlafchad. You're absolutely correct. Is that women could not only appeal to Moses, they could speak up.
Yeah.
And we have a modification in the law as a result. By God, by the way. It's God who reckoned, and Moses doesn't know what, it's not Moses making this up. In the narrative, it's God. And that all stands for something. That's very meaningful in the text. And
The only problem is that it's now 3,000 years later.
And we're still struggling with some of these
We're
issues.
still struggling with people's rights and gerrymandering and the right to vote and whatever else is everybody's rights that were established 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, very well said. Good question. It's a little confusing in the story if you don't, if you're not familiar with the tangential law that the text assumes you're familiar with, which is this right of redemption.
There were a lot of context clues, so you just filled in the picture for me.
Good. Okay. Good. Other comments? That was a great question. And again, we learn deeper, as Larry points out. It's and it's a great principle in the Torah, that the Torah doesn't cover every case, and also that there's modifications that take place in order to seek justice, in order to do right. And the Torah opens up with that story that
which is a Christian organization with part of the Masonic Order. And my wife is one of the leaders of that organization, which I'm part of also. And they have been using the roof, the book of the roof for years and years in their organization, as far as on their rituals and everything else, because they give out degrees. I mean, the first, second, third degree. The third degree is based on the book of Ruth.
Oh, and how do they use it in terms of their religious practice, or just in terms of their beliefs, or?
It's part of the organization and part of their religious thoughts also. I mean, that's the way they use that. I mean, book of Ruth, because they said that the true kingsman, this shows suspicious that Ruth has been a true kingsman, which it didn't wind up named Boaz, and then they wound up saying this 42 generations long came on Jesus Christ after 42 generations from.
Right. Well, because you get David,
Because of David,
David,
right?
and from David, eventually you get the Messiah.
Right, that's right.
Right,
Exactly.
Jesse.
Jesse, right,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
So
So she's rewarded, Ruth is
Right.
rewarded as being the matriarch, many generations later, for,
As a convert,
or,
right?
She's a
right.
convert. She's a original.
right,
Yeah.
or still to come, depending upon your religious faith and practice, of the Messiah. Because the Messiah is going to come from the lineage of David. That's why you have all this stuff at the very end. It probably was added to show that Ruth, that really anyone can come into Judaism. Anyone can become part of the children of Israel. But that's open and can be significant and play a significant role in the Jewish people's history or the Jewish people's lineage. So she becomes, I guess, the grandmother of David, which is, David plays obviously a very prominent and important role. Probably the first real Zionist. Yeah, I mean,
David
if
had
you really
some
read the story of
problems.
David, with all of his flaws and all of the problems that he did, he's very much exalted in our tradition as being a real Zionist. Yeah. Other comments, other
I just
insights?
have a personal thing to share. Today, for the first time, I recognized why my sister's middle name is Ruth. Because my mother in the 1960s emigrated to the US and converted to Judaism.
Wow.
Yeah. And the next decade, in the 70s, Michelle was born, and she's Michelle Ruth.
Isn't that beautiful?
Today she's Goldberg.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And I say that, I always knew her middle name, I never thought of why, and I don't even think I need to ask now.
Well, now you don't. Now, I mean, that very famous passage, wherever you go, I will go where you are. Your people will be my people, where you be buried. That's where I'll be buried. That's a very, very famous, very famous phrase in the Bible. And I believe it's recited at conversion ceremonies to show that that the person who converts really takes on a lot by doing that. I mean, there's a lot that there's a lot of responsibility, whether it's Reform, whether it's conservative, whether it's Orthodox. There is a certain burden that's assumed that we all take kind of for granted because we're born into it, and whereas somebody coming from the outside, it's quite an undertaking when you think about it. Just the culture, the commandments, the Torah, all of that. That's I'm always amazed, to be honest with you, with people that have chosen to come and be part of the Jewish people. Because it's just not an easy, it's not an easy thing to do. There's no real incentive. You know what I mean? There's no earthly incentive, or for that matter, there's no afterlife incentive. Unlike, say, in Christianity, there's an afterlife incentive to become Christian, right? Because you go to heaven, right? In Judaism, it's not so clear. It's a little more ambiguous, this whole business. So there's not, either theologically or materialistically, there's not
I want to say that in that case, okay, I was 70 years old when I decided to convert to Judaism.
You were 70 when you started?
Yes.
Wow.
And,
You look a day over 60.
almost 83 now. I'll be 84 next month. But
Hard to believe.
My goodness.
and I started.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
I was involved. I started out by just coming down here just to study Judaism. Rabbi Kinstead had a program for study Judaism.
Yeah.
So I came a couple of years just to understand about Judaism. And he just said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know yet. I'm not going to do it. What you convert? I said, I don't know. But, and I always talk to Cal and Dr. Friend of mine from Mississippi. We talked about this. Why don't you come on after? I started coming to Torah studies and continued to go to Torah studies. I said, well, why not? I mean, this day was getting out of Rabbi Kinstead getting to leave. So like, I'm leaving. We can convert now. We might wait now. You might get a new rabbi. I want to take you through the whole 4 years.
Start over.
Start over again. So I said, well, why not? So, and I mean, really, this is probably the greatest thing I ever done.
Yeah, wonderful to hear.
And Maud Patterson was my person benefit. I mean, it was a witness to my conversion, of my certificate. That's why we have a really close connection with Maud and I, because we always talk to each other. And she's 2 days older than she is. I was born on the 18th of July, she's born on the 22nd of July. So,
Who is this?
Maud Anderson.
Oh, okay.
So we always had that connection between Maud and I. But, when I stood there on the podium and was being converted, that's the only time I felt something. I felt that something just lifted off of me. I mean, I just had it didn't have to feel, I mean, something I never felt before. I mean, just felt like just like a breath of fresh air or something. Just all the things that seemed to have been bothering me for past, it just was gone.
Wow.
And it's a spiritual feeling I never had before, which I continue to have right now. And that's why I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can about Judaism, because it is very hard to do. So my friends started looking at me and said, oh, that guy's flipped out, he lost his mind, So, but, because I was involved in my church before I did photography stuff with the church and did little things. The church is further down the street here, down on Kennedy Street. So, which actually was my wife's church, because I came from Mississippi up here 30-some years ago, 40 years ago.
Wow.
But that's the idea. I mean, I passed this place for, I guess, for 30 years, and I realized there was a temple here, when it was here. But I agree, this is one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. And I'm still learning right now. It's a process. I mean, I have books I read, and, sometimes it's hard for me to translate some of the Hebrew and some of the other things, but I'm trying.
We're the lucky ones, James.
We are very blessed to have you. The Jewish people are very, very blessed. So it's a two-way.
Thank you for telling us
Thank you
that.
so much. Beautiful.
Beautiful sharing, especially today.
I really related to what you said about that lightness. I've always been Jewish, and I've always known I was Jewish and felt Jewish, but the degree to which in my life I've been practicing or been involved with the Jewish community, I've moved in and out of that activity throughout my life. And a couple of years ago, when Danette said, I found this temple, come with me. As soon as I started joining you here, I got that feeling. It's not that it ever wasn't possible, but it just lifted. It was beautiful. And if you've seen in me an enthusiasm for you all and this place, it's because it feels that way. It's neat.
Yes, Danette.
Learning from Ruth that she was faithful, sincere, humbled, which is what I feel all the time, and hardworking. That doesn't end at your bar mitzvah, but if you continue and you're faithful, then there's blessings everywhere. So I feel that for sure, humbled every time I walk through the doors. And we leave here all the time and talk for what Friday gives us is it's a lesson that we take through the week, and we're always looking for signs and beauty and making the connections coming on Friday. So it's a great start to the week for us.
Yeah, I think certainly this community and other communities, the Jewish communities I've been a part of, people that have come into Judaism have contribute so much. They really enrich, and renew, those of us that have been at it since birth, that kind of special feeling that you described. Sometimes over generations or over decades, you sort of lose that from time to time. But listening to the three of you, and thinking about people who have come into Judaism, who've chosen. There's a saying in the Talmud that people who come into Judaism are thorns in the sides of the Jewish people. Why? Because they take it very seriously, and those of us, and I put myself in this category often, you just kind of take it for granted because you kind of take it for granted, and people that come into the faith, I mean, first of all, they want to know why, and sometimes that leads to a gap between what one should be doing versus what one is actually doing, and we kind of, I won't say slough some things off, but there's things that we don't do that maybe we should be doing, and people who come into, I think, really enrich and really renew us in very, very, very special ways. I've always felt that, whether here or whether in the previous congregations that I've been at. And that's a far cry different from the communities that I grew up. Communities I grew up did not want, were not welcome. And even people who converted really were kind of ostracized. I see, Larry, you're kind of nodding your head. I mean, if you didn't, I hate to say this, look Jewish, as if there was a certain look you had to have, you weren't fully accepted. There was an undercurrent there of, okay, they converted, but it wasn't like today. It's changed a lot. I think so. That's my growing up, and even when I was studying in the rabbinate, it was beginning to get more accepted. But before that, there was a definite wall that was there. But I think today we're seeing that wall has been pretty much torn down, and for the good. For the good. And that wall wasn't erected, that wall was erected internally. Yeah. I see some heads nodding. I don't know if you want to comment on that perception. Today it's changed a lot. And I think, and again, I think for the better, I think we're just really enriched, to have you, James, come in and be Jewish, and, I don't use the word Jew by choice. I don't like that word. I think, because in the Talmud it says that once you convert, that's it. There's no terminology, there's no special term. You're Jewish in all respects. Why? Because when you become Jewish, you stand at Sinai. You stand at Sinai and you get the Torah just like everyone else. I mean, that's the symbolism. And you take on the mitzvot, you take on the study of Torah, and you're Jewish in all respects. Sometimes people have to catch up to that idea, but that's true. I mean, that is what we call the halacha. That's the law, and then we're all bound to that. Well, I don't want to keep us any longer. Why don't we conclude our service with the Aleinu and Adon Olam and Kaddish and so forth. Well, actually, we should do the Mishaberach prayer. What happened to our junior congregations? What happened to
She
Nora?
started making noise and he got nervous and took her out.
What noise?
I think he's right around the corner.
You can come in.
He's listening, tell him to come back in.
Yeah,
I'm back in.
we lost our minion.
Yeah.
Bring her back in here. What's the matter with you? I told
Yeah.
you.
She's great.
What? Singing along.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she was singing along. It was terrific. You know what? I come from a background of traditional. Right? I come from a very traditional background, and they had kids running around I mean, they would run up and down the aisles and make all kinds of noise and say shh, but they'd never send them out of the room, never.
Never, yeah.
So,
Okay, so we'll tell Andy to bring her back.
all right.
In the meantime, while
In the
he's making his
meantime.
way.
Okay. The Misha Berach.
Please join me in the Misha Berach. Misha Berach, Imotenu, Mekor HaBeracha, Lavortenu, may the source of strength,
Who bless the ones before us.
help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
Rhoda Bennett, Harold Fink, Mark Schoenfeld, Gloria Weisberg, Valerie Zimmerman, Judy Stein, David Cherniak, Harry Appelman, Phyllis Feibelman, Dr. John Johnson, Mark and Hetty Blinderman, Elise Zeman, Callie Wheeler, Jennifer and Amy Sundberg, Pam Fisher, Nicholas Kazantsis, Mike Thornton, Bettina Prager, Jack Friedlander, Amy Friedlander, Howard and Patricia Silverman, Nate Ginsburg. Anyone else who is in need of healing?
Helen Perry.
Thank you.
Joseph Brown.
Katie Adams.
Not currently.
No?
Misha Berach, Imotenu, Mekor HaBeracha, Lavortenu, bless those in need of
Healing with refuah shlema,
the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Please rise for the Alenu, page 586.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon v'kol, lateit gedula letzem reshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, shelo amanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo samtechenu chaim, v'gor aleinu ככל העונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
This week, we observed the yard sites of Helen Koffler, Jay Melamut, Violet P. Hirsch, Agnes Tannenbaum, Jerome Goldman, G.B. Kahn, Juan Antonio Rotella, Kenneth Morrow, Sophia Bornstein, Patricia E.
Fusco, and Colonel Norman H. Schwartz. Is there anyone who is observing a yard site who they wish to remember at this time? The Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabah, Bi'alma divrach chirutei, V'yamlich malchutei, V'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabah mevorach le'olam u'le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha p'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabamin shemaya V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God, who established peace unto the heavens, grant peace and comfort in the hearts of all who mourn. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. Just a few brief announcements. First, I want to especially thank my wife Maggie for preparing the bagels and the cream cheese and doing all of that. It was deeply appreciated, and arranging for us to have the delicious coffee that we had. So thank you, Maggie. Larry, that was the best grits, the first grits that I've ever tasted, and they were certainly the best. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming in and doing that. It's really deeply appreciated. It made it quite special. Priscilla, as always, thank you for just helping set up and getting things put together and getting all of this off the ground. David and Danette, just thank you for last night and for this morning. And of course, I want to thank Nora for bringing her parents here. Andy and Molly, thank you once again for helping make these services so very, very beautiful. And again, we want to acknowledge the people who came online, Jonathan Fratkin, as well as Howard and Patricia Silverman and Nate Ginsberg. And I want to thank Jim particularly for sharing the beautiful story about how he came into the Jewish people. Thank you. Right, on that note, we'll conclude. I have on our service order, Molly, yes, please, Larry.
The apple trees.
Yes, there are apples that to be gathered, they're ripe and to be picked and so forth. And next week, I'm told there will be figs.
That's right.
Thank you. So.
And for all those that want to observe Tashlich, I know it's out of season.
It's a little early, but that's okay. A little early.
There are grits in containers in the cafeteria.
Okay.
And you can take those cold grits and you can fry them and eat them, or you can do Tashlich and feed them to the ducks.
Sounds good to me. Do good. And Zachary, I forgot to thank you for coming. It was wonderful. We had a nice discussion. Zachary goes to Jewish day school, and he can not only read Hebrew, but he can read cursive as well, which is that's quite an achievement. And you read the Tanakh beautifully. Thank you for volunteering or having accepted the volunteer offering from Priscilla. Well, we will, and we hope you'll come again, and maybe you'll lead some of the service next time.
I've experienced reading a Chumash.
Okay. And I bet you know many of the prayers that we did today. I bet you know the Shema, the V'ahavta, and some of those prayers. So we look forward to seeing you the next time. Okay.
How long are you here?
I'm actually going this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
But you'll be back again.
Yeah.
We'll have to make sure he says something.
we're gonna conclude, and Molly, this is your choice.
Well, I was thinking Ojavo Shalom Aleichem.
Okay, sure, is that in the book?
I think it's on page 657.
Okay.
I was hoping people knew it. It was a little upbeat, so I wanted people to sing along.
Yeah. I actually know the song on guitar, but it would take too long for me to go get the guitar. Next time I'll have to. Okay. It sounds really good with guitar.
I bet it does. Okay, we'll do the short upbeat upward. So just join in. I'll kind of give you a little intro to it. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ojavo shalom aleinu v'al kulam. Salam aleinu v'al kulam. Salam, salam, salam aleinu v'al kulam. Salam, salam. Ojavo, one more time. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ve'al kulam. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ojavo shalom aleinu. Ve'al kulam. Shabbat shalom.